Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel, and today marks the first day of my I Tried Writing Like Ray Bradbury experiment. Only this time, I'm going to be trying to write like Ray Bradbury for an entire month. That's right, this is my longest I Tried Writing Like experiment yet. I can't wait. On the one hand, does this seem like a little much? Does this seem extreme? Sure. But for those of you who know Ray Bradbury's writing routine, I think you can see why I'd want to stick to this for longer than the usual 2 days that I do my experiments for. A quick note before we get into his routine. I was inspired to do this by, of course, Reading Zen in the Art of Writing by Ray Bradbury. Also, Shay from Shay with the Hobbies has been doing this Ray Bradbury challenge where she attempts to write a short story every week. She's done live streams throughout that time specifically for the Ray Bradbury challenge. So anyways, I'm going to be partnering up with Shay for some of this. I'm so excited. We're going to be doing some short story live streams together. I can't wait. More information on that to come. Yes. So now, what is Ray Bradbury's writing routine? Well, that's the fun part. He didn't really have a routine. Zen in the Art of Writing is really a love letter to writing in many ways, as much as it is about writing advice. But he talks about how he's never needed a routine in order to get the stories out, to get the words down, because they seem to just explode out of him, which I love. He does, however, have instructions for newer writers, writers of any ages, who want to build a routine, build up to work that's publishable, right? He does have a whole aside about how that necessarily shouldn't be the goal, but anyways, he's got advice for it. In fact, some of my favorite quotes from this are, "You must stay drunk on writing so reality cannot destroy you. The faster you blurt, the more swiftly you write, the more honest you are." But then of course we get to bits about what he did. He says, "I wrote at least 8,000 words a day every day from the age of 12 on." And that is the advice that he gives. Later on in the book, he'll say anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 words, but I'm going to go ahead for the purposes of this experiment and stick with the 1,000 that is repeated most often. So there is a word count goal of 1,000 a day, but it's a little bit more flexible than the rest of the goals that I'm going to be attempting. Because the writing part of this challenge is not the part that I think is going to be the most challenging, yes. I don't think the writing is going to be hard. My goal is to write one short story a week, much like Shay's Ray Bradbury challenge. He advises that you attempt to write one short story a week for a whole year, maybe even longer. The part that I am the most intrigued by, but also the most nervous about, is the reading. The common adage is to be a good writer, you need to read a lot. Write a lot, read a lot, that's the 1-2 punch. But I feel like Ray takes it a step further. In his bit about the muse must have shape. He will write 1,000 words a day for 10 or 20 years in order to try to give it shape, to learn about grammar and story construction so that this becomes part of the subconscious. Okay, again, 1,000 words, here we go. Anyways, if we are going to diet our subconscious, how prepare the menu? Well, we might start our list like this. Read poetry every day of your life. Poetry is good because it flexes muscles you don't often use enough. That's something that I definitely notice, where I do love poetry, but oftentimes, you know, I've never attempted to write poetry outside of little challenges that I've done, or like my 7th grade English class or something, right? But my favorite poems are often so lyrical, and I feel like that's, if I like it so much, sometimes that's the sort of style that you'd want to emulate. So more of that, please. What else fits in our diet? Books of essays. Here again, pick and choose, amble among the centuries. Poetries, essays, what about short stories, novels? Of course. Read those authors who write the way you hope to write. Those who think the way you would like to think, but also read those who do not think as you think or write as you want to write, and so be stimulated in directions you might not take for many years. Much further on in the book, he talks about how we are cups constantly and quietly being filled. The trick is knowing how to tip ourselves over and let the beautiful stuff out, but we're filling the cup with all of these short stories and poems and essays. And yeah, so he did mention novels in the bit that I read, but for the most part, when he's talking about his challenge to you, the reader, it is to read one short story, one poem, and one essay per day, and to write 1,000 words a day, with a goal generally over the week to complete one short story. He even says, I think at one point, if you write a short story every week, you are bound to have at least a couple good ones, right? So that's the whole shtick, is not necessarily to get the bad words out, but to practice so much that you stumble upon the genius, right? So anyways, that's it. That is what I will be doing for a whole month. This does give me a lot of flex room in my other projects, which I think is one of the reasons that I like this experiment the most, is that I can still be working on my novels. I can still be reading my novels, but we're really just kind of adding to what I feed them use. So that being said, I don't often read a lot of short stories, poems, or essays. Essays maybe more so than short stories or poems, but I needed some help. So I turned to Patreon and I asked my patrons, one, of course, if they wanted to join this experiment with me, and I'm really excited to do some of our little community events, but two, what their favorite poets were, their favorite essayists, their favorite short story writers, and if they had any individual poems, short stories, essays that just sang to them, that made their soul soar, you know? And I got so many responses, so many incredible responses. It was really fun seeing some of the duplicates. So I made multiple trips to the library, put multiple books on hold, and I now have 18 checked out. Let me turn you. So obviously some of these are novels, but several of these are short stories that I am so excited to read. I have more poems that I need to check out, but the plus side of poetry I find is that especially older poetry, it's easier to find online than a short story in its whole. So I think with the aid of the internet, I will have a little bit more flexibility in what I'm able to find and read. So without further ado, I think it's time to start my day. And I think I'm gonna start it by reading. And I'm going to start with Lighthead by Terrence Hayes, which won the National Book Award for Poetry. These are relatively short poems, but I need to read to you the start of Lighthead. Lighthead's Guide to the Galaxy. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and children of the state. I'm here because I could never get the hang of time. You know, I'm realizing as I keep reading that I passed one poem for the day. So if I keep reading short poems, like the one poem challenge will be really easy. Of course, some poems are longer, some short stories will be longer, but anyway, but I can't put it down. That's really what the problem is. Is that I just want to keep reading it, which is not really a problem per se, but like, what if I just do one book of poetry, one short story? I mentioned before about how I like the lyrical poems, and this is so beyond that. It is that. Like, the rhythm with which it reads is wonderful, and it takes such a skill to write poetry. Like, you know, when you're listening to a song for the first time on the radio or something, like where it has a discernible beat, it's kind of poppy, you know, basically the context, and it's almost like you know the words without needing to know the words. This has that where it's like, I know where the sound is going, the rhythm, the flow is going, but the words always surprise me. So I'll be in the middle of reading it and I'm like, okay, I have this like move, this pulse, but then like I'll be shocked by where it went and I have to go back and reread it, and I'm going through it again and again, and then you get a little bit farther in the same thing, and it's just the kind of poems where, I mean, they're so short too, but like I could reread them multiple times and get something different, something more each time. Anyways, I've read 3 of them. I'm trying to stop myself because what I want to do, oh, my computer's not up. Because what I want to do is get to the writing. I had a short story that I was working on earlier, a little bit last week, in part inspired by a different writing advice book, where the trick is that I'm not using any dialogue. And I did the shit draft, the crap draft, the vomit draft, the zero draft, and now it's going to be the time where I'm doing the first draft and kind of getting the rhythm of the story. So I know what I'm attempting to tell now. I have some of the surprise elements are gone. I've written those surprises and now it's incorporating them in a way that I'm getting closer to how I'd want it to be read and shared. So with Lighthead in mind, the rhythm. All right, I now have 420 words and it You can see a little bit of yellow, but all the rest of it is, I think, pretty good. It has more of the tempo that I want. It's not just me slamming on the keys. However, I think now is the perfect time to read some essays. Zadie Smith's Feel Free. I'm ready. How many times can she use the same transition? You may be wondering. I guess we will find out together. How long? This is a 5-part essay collection. And I'm going to start with In the World. Northwest London Blues. Oh, yeah, I'll read the foreword. May I help you, sausage? Hello. Hello. Okay, not to get too far ahead of myself with this experiment, but I love it so much. I really enjoyed the first essay, which is mostly about libraries. It had some real zingers though, which I loved, but the foreword I found especially interesting, where she's basically talking about her qualifications to be writing a book of essays, which is to say that she doesn't think she has any qualifications. She's not a philosopher or anything like that. But I love that she says, writing exists for me at the intersection of 3 precarious, uncertain elements: language, the world, the self. And it goes on a little bit more, but anyways, really enjoyed it. Northwest London Blues, the first one is about libraries. Whoop, which, again, I got almost all these books from the library. She starts us in this market that is adjacent to the library, and the rest of it kind of follows the library and its path to being closed down and just talking about that kind of thing. It was not even like going to one of these farmers markets that have sprung up all over London, the crossroads where personal wealth meets a strong interest in artisanal cheeses. And I just had a little chuckle to myself. Another part that I thought was funny, the 3 of us lamented this change in the cultural vandalism we felt it represented. Or if you take the opposite view, we stood around pointlessly like the Luddite, fiscally ignorant liberals we are, complaining about the inevitable. The thing I love most about essays is it puts into words something that I hadn't necessarily thought of or put into words before. She mentions at one point, which again is not necessarily the point of the essay, but just like the story that she's taking us on, how being farther away from home and hearing bad news tends to hint even harder because you don't have the day-to-day life of being in the place, you just have the bad news. And I thought that was really interesting. I hadn't necessarily thought of it like that before, but it feels quite true to me. So anyways, Zelda, do not attack your sister. That's all to say, it is 10:05 and I've read a couple poems, an essay, written 400 words of a short story for the week. I'm crushing it. It's wonderful. I do have some other work stuff that I need to do throughout the day, but this is a wonderful start.
The following is intended only for mature audiences.
Come on up, sausage. Come on. Good job. We are all in here because we're getting a new dishwasher today, so we'll be working from here for the rest of the day. It's here, Vin. It's here. Are you excited for your box? Because you know it will be a toy for you afterwards. It's here. It's here. Yay. All right. As you can see, that's cute. For all the puzzles so that I can actually do them again without fear that Vin will eat the pieces or knock it off, which she is wont to do. Now the question is, Which puzzle will I choose to reward myself for finishing my emails and work today? I think this 550 piece one, you know, ease myself back into it. And it feels Halloween-y.
With a very well-known company in Germany in the tech business, and that is the path what you want. It's very stressful, but I think Jean trusts me that I can pull it off.
Alright, it is now 7:11 p.m. So after working today, it is now time to get back to the writing. I got 420 of my 1,000 words in the short story that is going to be for the whole week. However, I still need another 580 words then. So I'm actually going to work on a completely different project under the romance pen name. Oh. And I did download some short stories on my Overdrive app, and I figured there was nothing better than The Martian Chronicles by one Ray Bradbury. This is actually one that was recommended multiple times over by people on Patreon, so I'm very excited to get started reading it. But without further ado, let us write. I am forgetting something though. Hydrate with wine. Are you teaching her? That's a good puppy. Alright, 1,337 words. Now I think it's time to read The Martian Chronicles. Ooh, January 2030, Rocket Summer. 2030, oh my god, that's less than a decade away. That's so wild. Okay, so I started reading The Martian Chronicles. I did not realize that this is what was called a fix-up novel. So basically these short stories were originally published and someone came to Ray Bradbury afterwards and was like, you could make that into a novel, just kind of combine them. So he did a little bit of work. He changed them a little bit, not all of them, but some of them so that it better fit the flow of what a novel would be. But yeah, very interesting. So I'm excited. I will point out the table of contents because August 2057, There Will Come Soft Rains in particular was one that was recommended multiple times over, especially because it was based off of a poem by the same name, which is very cool. So I can basically check off a poem and a short story, 1-2 punch. And yeah, I just think that's really cool. So all in all, for this I tried writing like Ray Bradbury experiment, I'd say that it was much easier than a lot of the experiments that I've done before. The reading was actually not too challenging, I think, because I chose relatively short stories and a relatively short poem. That being said, I did also listen to The Year of Yes throughout the day, as well as, I don't know if I can possibly count this, though it feels kind of like an essay. I've been listening to The Dream, which is about like MLMs, at least in this first series. So yes, I got through 2 episodes while I was puzzling yesterday. Anyways, while I'm not counting it in terms of the media I'm consuming, because those weren't specifically what Ray Bradbury advised, I think the idea of taking in inspiration from a lot of different sources, reading stuff and listening to stuff that you don't necessarily write but would like to kind of aspire toward, is really helpful, whether that's a podcast or any of the things that he recommends. Essays, short stories, poems. Yes. I didn't include as much about Ray Bradbury in this experiment video since I have gushed about him semi-recently, but reading his short story and then rereading parts of Zen and the Art of Writing, it just affirms for me how I felt about his writing in particular. So it's really nice to now be consuming even more of that. He goes on the list of authors where I don't know that I could ever write like him. Who else is on that list? N.K. Jemisin, Terry Pratchett. You know, but I love their writing, all for different reasons, all in different ways, but they're the writers that I just look up to in awe. So, but as it is the next day, I do want to say that I've already gotten the 1,000 words and it is just after 10 o'clock. So again, I'm not sure that this is doable for everyone. It might be something that you should try and do like a little bit smaller version of potentially, but and I'm so excited to do a full month of it. So please do comment down below. Let me know if you'd like to join me on this challenge. Let me know what your favorite poem, short story, essay is. Let me know where you go to get more of those things. Let me know how often you visit the library. And just in general, let me know what you think of Ray Bradbury's quote unquote routine. But that is gonna be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching and I will see y'all very soon with a new video. Oh, and look forward to an update at the end of the month. Yes, bye. That's right. All of September will be Ray Bradbury style. No, what? However, I still need another 680 words then. No,